rich is like denial that you're rich. Isn't that something? There's almost a stigma about it. Like, you wouldn't be ashamed if I said, raise your hand if you're tall. And you're sitting there like 6'3". Raise your hand if you're tall. No, I'm not. Everybody would be looking at you like, bro, put that gangly big arm up in the air and wave it around. Like, you are freakishly large. Like, right? You wouldn't feel sad about it. You wouldn't beat yourself up. You wouldn't have a bit. You'd be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. If I said, raise your hand if you are athletic, you'd be like, well, y'all don't want to be prideful. But you wouldn't, eventually your wife or, your friend, or dude, raise your hand up. No, raise your hand up. You'd raise that muscular arm or whatever. If I said, raise your hand if you're artsy, you wouldn't be ashamed. You'd be in the back sipping a latte with a beret. Yeah, we're here. Or whatever. You know who you are. If I said, raise your hand with an extrovert, you'd stand up. I'm extroverted. Have I met you yet? I'm totally, let's network. Right? Or whatever. You wouldn't think twice about it. And yet, who's rich? Suddenly no one. So here's a catch. Nobody's rich, but everybody knows someone who is. Isn't that something? Nobody's rich, but we all know someone who is. And so I thought, we've got a real problem here, because I do not believe these verses are for no one. I believe they're for somebody, and everybody in here knows somebody who's rich. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to help you, and I'm going to give you characteristics of rich people, so that if you ever spot one in the wild, you will be able to identify rich people. You ready? It's crazy stuff about rich people. A lot of it you won't believe. First, I got to define rich. Rich means having all your needs met and extra. Is that a fair definition of rich? Have all your needs met and extra. Wouldn't that feel good? Right now, if I just told you, boom, all your needs are met and you have extra, you'd feel rich, right? Needs, simple. Let's just go back to 8th grade civics class, right? Food, clean water, clothing, transportation, shelter, football. Like, there are just a few needs, right? And once you have all your needs met and extra, you're good to go. You're rich. So let me tell you about rich people. Rich people work sometimes often at jobs, and what they'll do is they save money they don't need. Because if they save it, it means they don't need it right there. So they've got enough money that they can not only pay for all their needs and some enjoyment, then they'll save some. And they put it in a mutual fund or some investment and give it some tax code like 401k. But they make so much money that they can actually put some money away just in case they don't die before they need that extra money. That's it. Rich people, I've heard about this. You're not going to believe this. There are some people who are so rich, they can purchase a week's worth of food. Stay with me. They can buy 7 days worth of food on only 5 days worth of work. I know, it's laughable, because who has that much money, right? But you can only go to work for 5 days and there are some people so rich, not just them, but their whole family. They can feed an entire family 7 days, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks, and only have to work 5 of the 7 days. It's unheard of. There are some rich people who have thrown away food. I've heard of this. They have refrigerators to keep their food cold, because they buy it sometimes a week at a time. And they'll open up the refrigerator and they'll bring in new food, and there will be food there that could potentially be edible, but it's close. They will actually throw it away. And I don't even know what that looks like, but it's like, oh, I guess we didn't get to eat this stuff, and just toss it away. And they must throw a party where I'm throwing away food. I am balling. Like, look how rich I am. Right? What? They're so rich, they throw away food. There are people, I've heard about rich people who will stand in line. Rich people don't like to wait in lines, because it's boom, boom, boom. I'm rich, but they'll stand in line for, let's say they go to the Apple store, and they'll stand in line with a phone from which they can text and call, and they'll do that. They'll text other people and call other people, and they'll be explaining to them, I'm in line for this new device that can, you ready? Text and call. And no one dies in an explosion of irony. I've heard about never seen this, but I've heard about people that are so rich, they'll stand in front of a closet full of clothes. And have the audacity to say the following sentence: I just don't have anything. You've met these rich people. You know these rich people. Yeah. So I wear my work clothes, my after work clothes, my workout clothes, my work in the yard clothes. I don't know. You've got something. There are people who work for companies. These people are so rich, these companies will look at them and say, we want you to take 2 weeks, okay? Do not come into work. Do not do any work for 2 weeks, and we will give you money. It's called vacation days. You ever heard of this? Do you know how laughable that is? Like, the rest of the world is cracking up laughing that there exists a place in planet Earth where people will say to you, don't do any work. Here's money for not doing anything, right? You know how rare this is? Do I need to, keep going, or are you guys with me? You guys are with me already? Okay, yeah. Okay, one more. There are people so rich, they've built little houses for their cars. Like, who does that? People don't have houses. We build houses for our cars. Some of you have 2 cars in a house. These car houses. And you get mad when you don't have to open the door for your car house. Oh, my remote's broken for my car house. Now, Tom, you're saying, you told me the sermon was going to be about rich people. You didn't describe rich people. You just described normal, average, everyday people. You described everyday life. Exactly, that's my point. You are what you call normal. Someone in the world right now looks at your life and says, rich. I thought you were going to talk about Donald Trump or Bill Gates or LeBron James. No, who's rich? We say no one, but no one is rich. But as I said, everyone knows someone who is. Look, the person you think is rich, this works the other way around. The person you think is rich, they just think they're normal. Because everybody does. We all do it. No one is rich. So who is rich? We got to figure this out. Who is rich? So we turned to Gallup, who did a great poll asking people who is rich. Like, what's the number where we're rich? What's that magical line, we're rich? And you can probably guess the answer. The answer is, it totally depends on who you ask. Is that something? And so I want to make sure I get my numbers right. They asked people who made less than $30,000 a year. So all the survey of people whose annual income is less than $30,000, and the number they said, what is rich? What is rich? What's that magical number? The answer they came up with was, they said this great quote, no one is rich, but no. Yeah, they came up with 74 grand. They said, when you make that number, then you're rich, right? Okay. And some of you are already getting the point because you just got your W-2 and you go, oh, why make that? Well, guess what? The guy making 30 thinks you are loaded, okay? And if we ask the guy making 74,000, do you think you're rich? He'd say, no, I'm not rich. So Gallup asked people who made between, again, I want to make sure I get this right, the next 30,000 to 50,000, and they said the guy making is just 100 grand. So see, the people who, in other words, each one is like just a little more than double. If I had just a little more than double, apparently is the standard. And then Money Magazine did a funny survey on really high income earners, and they didn't talk about annual wages. They just talk about net assets. Because if we ask the guy making 100, he doesn't think, he's rich. Everybody get my point. So they asked, Money Magazine did this survey where, okay, what's the number of total assets? And the number what's the number where you feel comfortable? You would finally say, this is rich, you're all set. And that number they came up with was, 5 million. So if you had all these total assets, then that's rich. I should say so, but But what's funny about that is go to the guy making 3 million, and he's going, right? And I'm sure if we ask the guy who has $5 million in the bank, what do you think? Are you good? Right? Don't we always look up the ladder? Never down, The way to make a guy with a $100,000 house miserable is put him in a neighborhood where everybody has a $300,000 house, right? That's all. I was so happy with my house. And now I'm not, right? That's it. Because we look up the ladder, not down. So let me just sort of visualize looking down the ladder just a second. If you want to take nationally, those numbers are kind of fun. But globally, it stops being fun. So globally, you can go to the globalrichlist.org, and there it is. .com, excuse me. Global, who knows what dot? It was probably a gambling site. Thanks, Pastor. Globalrichlist.com, and it'll tell you the actual number of where you stand on a global scale. And so you type in your annual income, and you get an actual number of out of 100 people, 7 billion, Out of that percentage, where are you? And so you might type in, say the average income, median income in this country is about $50,000. So say you type in $50,000 out of 100 people in the world. Guess where that puts you? Guess where you are in that line? $50,000. Show them. You would be there. Like, just to belabor this point ever so slightly, if you make $50,000, you're not in the top 1%. You're in the top 0.98% of the world, right? Okay, well, say you're poor in this country. Say you only made $100, not $100 a week. Say you made $100 a month. Right? You can't live on $100 a month. That's insane. That's like if you were a babysitter in this country, where would you be? Yeah, you've only moved. You're still in the top 36.25% of the richest people in the world. You start making $1 a day, and you start getting down to where the rest of the world is. Now would be a good time as any to sort of stop for a moment and address a couple things. The first is if you haven't got the point already, we're richer than we think. And when I say to you, after all of my evidence globally and nationally, and when I stand before you and say, hey, these verses aren't about nobody, they're about me and they're about you, congrats, you're rich. I just want to point out like two things. One is like, nobody seemed overly happy about my news. You know, and it didn't happen at